What does reparenting even look like? A lot of us are not even familiar with reparenting. We're like, this is a new word. What the fuck is reparenting? I already have two parents. Like, what do you want me to do with like me being the third? Makes no sense. Now, reparenting, as I said before, is the act of parenting ourselves, the inner child, where we're from, to be able to provide what we didn't have. Think about it really simply, right? This is one powerful question that I ask. In fact, last night on the Gauntlet, I was teaching them about attachment theory and the core wound, which is basically, it's almost the start of the Gauntlet journey, where I'm teaching you one of the most important things for yourselves, which is, where is your pain really coming from? Where's your dependency coming from? Where's your need for connection coming from? Where's the root cause of why you have either this connection, this deep addiction to connection, or deep disconnection from connection to people? Disconnection from connection. Interesting. And so the core wound, you go back to your childhood, and I take people through, yesterday I did holotropic breath work, and I take them through this subconscious meditation where they go deep into this area of the childhood, and everybody was like crying and like letting those feelings out. But that part of reparenting is where, so the first thing is you're discovering where the pain came from. You're discovering where the space of like, oh my God, like what was it like in my childhood? Was my father or mother an alcoholic? Were they really abusive? Did they not have time for me? Did they only show us connection because it made them feel a certain way? Like, if I got good grades, only then my dad would pat me on the back. Or if I only did well in sports, then my mom would say like, good job, son or daughter, you're doing really well. Or if I only did something around the house, or if I was only good to the neighbors, because all of those things make that my parents feel good in some way, right? So then I'm now performing for them. I'm basically now not even my own identity. I'm doing whatever I can from them to be able to get some love and connection. So bit by bit, I'm starting to feel unworthy. So we go to those moments where we meditated around them, some which, like, depending on where you're coming from or what you felt, they could be even like abusive, they could be different situations. And so in that moment, we discover, what did you feel? What was it that the child felt in that moment? How, did they feel invalidated, rejected, abandoned? Did they feel so afraid, scared that there wasn't enough love, connection? Did they feel like they had to run back into their room? Did they feel like, they were alone? What did they feel in that moment? And then when you understand the pain of that feeling, so in that meditation, I take them through another 2 minutes of holotropic where they're pushing themselves to release it. So some people are crying, some people are punching their pillows, some people are like pushing and pulling things, because that's what your inner child is feeling today based on your wound from like decades ago. It's still living inside you. And so the first thing you need to do is recognize that feeling and grieve for it. Know that it's within you. Say the truth, accept it. Accept that that hurt is in there. Because then you have the power to change it. By accepting it's there, you recognize its presence, which means you can recognize what to do with it. And so in that moment, after that, after people have that release, then we step into being this alter identity, which is now your present self. You recognize that little baby child or that little child sitting there crying in a corner or feeling so invalidated. And then you go down kind of on one knee, and then you lift them up, and then you hold them close and you rub their back, and you rub your hand through their hair, or like whichever way that child really needed to be touched. And so for me, I'd imagine as if like I am rubbing my cheek against my little baby boy's cheek. I'm rubbing his back, playing with his curly hair, and I'm saying, you're so important to me. No matter whether you do well, you don't do well, no matter whether you like show up or anything, you will always be loved by me. I will always show up for you. I'll make the effort to do this with you. I will play with you. I promise I'll do those things. And in that moment, you just recognize for yourself, after you do that stuff, how much more secure you start to feel within. It's almost like the switch starts to flip a little bit, where you start to feel like, wow, I feel like I've not only let go of a little bit of emotion and pain, but I'm also feeling a little bit more safe. I'm also feeling a little more grounded. That feeling of grounded and not needing the affection, validation, connection of somebody else desperately, or not running away from it either, that's starting to build your internal security. Now, one meditation is not enough. Reparenting is a continuous act. I've been reparenting myself for like probably a decade at this point, because it's a continuous awareness of, where do my wounds lie? So even when you get triggered by someone, right? Like, let's say you're having like a conversation with someone else in your life, and you get triggered by them in a particular moment, you are reacting to something that you're sensitive to. It's very easy for the ego to blame them and be like, you're the fucker who like did this to me. I'm going to hold you accountable. They may be the instigator of why you're reacting. But if it was something that you weren't really sensitive to, you'd be like, yeah, dude, whatever. I don't have time for this. Like if someone came up to me, for example, and said, "You're the ugliest white guy I've ever seen," I'd be like, yeah, that's because I'm brown. I'm not sure if you noticed, but that's just how it is. I wouldn't react. I wouldn't feel triggered by it at all, because I'd be like, dude, this makes no fucking sense. But if it was something I was sensitive to, I'd be like, who the fuck are you to talk to me like that? And get really up in their face, react, get triggered. But that's because I am sensitive to it. And so there lies the wound that needs the healing, right? And then you can track it back to where that wound comes from. It could be a feeling of invalidation for me from somewhere in my childhood or somewhere in my youth. Anyway, so whenever we notice these points where we get triggered in our lives, whenever we notice these points in our lives where we're getting really challenged, triggered, also, not just by someone else, by ourselves. Whenever we're noticing that we're feeling really lonely, when we're feeling kind of like, what, I put out a post today about the definition of neediness and how it's got, like, we put so much shame on ourselves, but it's just using a coping mechanism too much, just depending on someone too much. It's so correctable, it's so understandable and healing. Like, you can just tell yourself, oh shit, I'm doing this again. Yeah, that's all it is. It's a reminder. But in that moment, what you do with it is what counts. So in those moments when you feel alone, when you really want to go back to the ex, when you want to go back to some bad, shitty patterns that are really not good for you, when you want to like repeat some of the past, like, things that haven't worked out for you, those are the moments that you're trying to reach out for something. Those are the moments that you're trying desperately to reach out for anything to provide you some validation. Those are the moments you need to validate yourselves. And that's when you go back, you sit with yourself and you do, like, I've actually put out some posts on Ho'oponoponos and inner child meditation. I've been giving them out for free on the fucking Instagram. So you guys should go back on those like videos and check them out. And you just plug in one of those, or you just listen to one of those and you sit with yourself and you say, you are so loved and valuable. You don't need to run after somebody else's love, because you are worth your own love. And the person who's meant for you will sense it. They'll smell it. They'll feel it. And they'll come to you to be able to provide it for you because you fucking deserve it. Are you nuts? It's like saying to us, oh, we don't deserve like air, but we're still fucking breathing. Like, whether you like it or not, it's so obvious. So we never say to ourselves, oh no, I don't deserve air. You're like, no, it's my birthright almost, right? So you don't even think twice about it. And that's truly how we need to feel about love. But to feel that way, we have to take away everything else that's actually holding us in here. To feel that way, we have to take away everything else that's preventing us from actually being in this space and feeling like we're worthy of love. It's almost like the thing that's blocking us from love, think about it as like, think about yourself as this beautiful little light, right? Now, as you go along in life, if I keep wrapping a sheet over sheet, or a cloth over cloth over cloth over cloth, like all your conditioning is these layers of one sheet, went through abuse, another sheet, was invalidated by someone, another sheet or another cloth. Bit by bit, you start currently looking at yourself right now and you're like, I'm just this ball of cloths. That's what you think of yourself. But the truth is, you're none of that fucking shit. You're actually a beautiful white light, but you can't see it. You can't see it at all. And so the point of what we're doing right now through reparenting is taking off that conditioning. Saying that all the shit that was done to me was not true. All the shit that like had happened to me and the conditioning, it doesn't define who I am. I am this beautiful white light, and I must understand how to find that version of me. Which is another aspect of why reparenting is so important, because you are parenting that child who actually is so innocent, so pure, so untainted by life, so like, it's before they've had all the levels of conditioning that you have currently. That version of you is so malleable. That version of you is so like flexible, malleable, lovable. They're so able to recreate and create like this marvelous future for yourself. And so that's when you go back to that self, you start to see so much of like independence. You start to see so much love. You start to see so much innocence. You start to see so much truth. And it becomes easier to work with ourselves, because then it's easier to let go of shame. How many of you can look at a sweet, innocent, loving child and hate on them, like throw shame and neglect and abandonment on them? You can't. It's so fucking hard. It's like looking at a puppy and like wanting to do something terrible. I don't even want to think about it. It's like it can't even happen. And so it's so easy when you take that and to love that. And that's really what's inside us. That's really what's driving us. And reparenting happens through various ways. Like the most powerful ways is taking all of those moments where you wish someone showed up for you. Those moments where you really had pain and wanted them to show up for you, and now showing up for yourself in those moments. That's what's really, really important about those moments. And so that's how you, in that way, are now recreating that story that drives you. And instead of that belief that, oh no, people are not going to show up for me, they're not going to love me, they're not going to validate me, they're not going to give me care unless I prove something to them. Instead of that whole fucking story, you made a new one, which says like, yeah, I am so beautiful, I am so lovable, I am so powerful. And you know what that does? That gets you to be a whole expansive, powerful being, because now your love for yourself is not conditional. Your expectation for yourself also is not conditional. Your performance in life is not conditional, and your relationships that you meet and you match with, they're not conditional on your wounds. You're slowly healing and growing from them and letting them go.